Ahead, folks. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be on the face of the planet. This is Climate Action 101, and well, it's a place where we invite people who are working on different aspects of in terms of business, individuals, and government to highlight what are the actions they're taking to not just reduce carbon emissions, but also mop up and draw down the carbon emission in the atmosphere. And so today we have joining us, it's Ed Kiggins, who is a musician, is a writer, also a filmmaker, an artist. It's a climate reality leader from Delaware. That's Newark, Delaware chapter, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Great. Can we meet you, Mr. Ed?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to be with you, Tosin. Thank you for having me today. As you mentioned, that's what I do. I'm a communications person by trade, a creative, and also happen to be very passionate about climate change. So I try to bring that passion to the work that I do whenever I'm able to do it. I think the majority of my life has been spent in magazines, and as magazines have moved away from being just print vehicles, we've done a lot more in video and web and mobile, trying to tell stories. I think that's what I do by trade. I'm a storyteller. When I have the opportunity, I try to hammer this message of the importance of acknowledging and addressing climate change whenever I can.
But by the way, what makes you believe in it? We got a lot of people who do not believe in the realities of climate change. What inspires you?
I think for me, there's so many people out there who experience the horrors of climate change every day, from being displaced, having to move to leave your hometown, your house. I live in southeastern Pennsylvania in the United States, and there were many people who lost their homes. It's usually a very safe space. Nothing really happens here, but people were displaced this summer because of hurricanes, because flooding from hurricanes had reached our lands. They have no homes to go back to, and that's us. We're in a safe zone. So I think, but that's not really the reason that I got into this. That's a fairly late development in life. For me, I think I began as a child. My interest in the environment, the ecology movement. I came up in like the 70s and 80s, and that was a really huge push. People started recycling in my lifetime. That wasn't a thing when I was a kid. So I've always kind of had that mentality. And but I think for me, what really cemented it was when I saw An Inconvenient Truth, when Al Gore's movie came out. And I think that when I started to see the science behind it, and it wasn't just talking points, this is really happening. It hit home for me in a big way. So, I will tell you that I'm sort of I think I come at this from a different angle, not just, I haven't been personally affected by climate change. I haven't been negatively. I've not been displaced. The worst thing, my patio furniture blew away, something like that. But the thing I think that drives me is that as a journalist, as a magazine writer, I covered a company called Better Place, which is a U.S.-based company that actually had a global footprint. And Better Place's model was it was a car-based infrastructure solution where they developed an infrastructure where electric vehicles were powered by replaceable batteries, which extended the range of an EV to almost infinity. The idea was that you could take existing gas stations and transform them into electric battery swapping stations. And those batteries were charged on a smart grid during off hours by non-fossil fuel sources, whether it was solar or tidal or wind. And it just made so much sense. And I actually traveled to Copenhagen to see this model in place. And I got to drive a car through the streets of Copenhagen. I pulled into a swapping station. It was a very familiar experience to me. you're pulling into a gas station, pulling into a battery swapping station. Robots came, they removed the depleted battery, they replaced it with a full battery, and I was on my way. And as I saw that, and I realized what I was seeing, that there were no fossil fuels in that entire line of responsibility. Nothing bad happened. No one had to suffer. No one had to be displaced, and it was clean, green. And when I saw the solution, that's what I think has really driven me throughout my career, because I've seen what a real solution looks like, and I know how effective and impactful it can be. So.
Great, thank you. You've seen what real solution looks like, and those solutions appears to be cleaner and sustainable. That means they're viable. So, what do you tell to people who sometimes feel like it's impossible to have a good economic progress and climate and it's difficult to solve climate change and still have economic progress?
Right. Well, I don't want to be too blunt about this, but money is a construct, and I understand that the world depends on an economic system or several economic systems that hopefully work in harmony, and that they all kind of have to make sense unto themselves and then as integrated. I get that. But when you strip humanity down to an organism, money is a construct. It didn't exist. And if we ever have to go look for another planet to live on, what are we going to look for? Are we going to look for one that has jobs or, an economy or, any of the things that we create? They don't exist in nature. I mean, that what you look for is you look for what we have. Stable orbit in a Goldilocks zone around a very stable star that's got billions of years left ahead of it. And in a place where you have liquid water and, potable water and breathable oxygen. We have what we need, and we are destroying it based on a concept that we agreed upon. Someone once told me money is a mutually agreed upon illusion, that we just both say, okay, it's got value, and that's what gives it its value. So, but that notwithstanding, I mean, I think that's an important point. But even if you dig down into the economy of it all, green power makes sense. It's the fastest growing job market. You're talking about taking, I think I'm sketchy on the figures, but I think there's somewhere around 30 times the number of solar and wind jobs out there that are available as there are coal jobs right now. And the coal industry is shrinking, and the potential for growing green energy is unbelievable. We've got nowhere to go but up. So there's, not only does the economy really not factor into it, but even if it did, all the indicators say go into green energy now because it's the future. So
great, thank you. So green energy is the future to go to, and it's also a future with a lot of prospects. But some will say that green energy can be very expensive, especially for individuals to adopt. What's your experience with that?
Well, the truth of the matter is it is expensive. Any technology is expensive out of the gates. When Tesla first put out their very first car, it was $100,000 for essentially what was an electric battery in a Lotus. And now you see the price come down over time. I remember as a kid, I was alive when the very first pocket calculators came out. Pocket calculators were about $150. Now you get them for free if you open a bank account, or they're built into a cereal box. It's just, the technology becomes so commonplace. Once you push past that initial bump, the cost to produce it comes down as quickly as we've seen dramatic decreases in the cost of production for solar panels and for wind turbines and all the other technologies that are out there. So it's down right now. I think we've seen, or we're about to see parity, which is where the cost of producing is equal, coming in the very next year. 2021 is where we're supposed to hit parity when it comes to the cost effectiveness of green energy versus fossil fuel. And it's the trajectory. The cost of producing green energy is coming down. Cost of fossil fuels is going up. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of, I think Deutsche Bank refuses to fund any coal-powered plants anymore. So if you're hoping to start your own coal-powered plant, you better have deep pockets, because you're going to be footing the bill yourself. So it's like the world is speaking. The world seems to know what so few people want to cling to. You know, there are very few people out there who make their livelihood on fossil fuels. So it's kind of understandable. You know, like you are, if we were playing Monopoly, you've got all the hotels on Park Place and Boardwalk or whatever. You basically have all the wealth. And I understand that you want to hold on to that wealth. But at the end of the day, if we don't address this problem, no one's wealth means anything, because there won't be any wealth. There won't be a civilization or a society or a species. We'll give this planet over to the next things that can survive. Well, we're creating a situation that we're not going to survive, put it that way.
But I have been in conversation with some people who would say maybe there's an excuse for business as usual, to say there's always hope in technology, that we'll always find the technological solutions. So let's just continue with business as usual. Will technology always provide the way out? Will we always have, through technology, be able to mop up the carbon in the atmosphere? Is that a true hope, or it's a false hope?
You're talking about removing carbon from the atmosphere?
Yes, and also because just like removing carbon from the atmosphere, and also other market-based solutions, people often assume that since we have the market-based solutions, we can just continue with business as usual. That would always won't somehow be able to resolve our climate crisis without paying the price.
Right. So it's, I would say that there's danger in complacency. I don't think, until we reach a point where we know for a fact that we're safe, we're not safe. And I think it's a bit misguided for us to believe that we have things figured out. Yes, we're seeing tremendous gains. We're seeing electric vehicles, not just on a consumer side, but on a fleet side and a logistics side. There are electric-based trailers, tractor trailers that could go across the country, the planet. Public buses that are running on hydrogen, like green hydrogen. There are those solutions out there, and they are growing in number, and they're becoming a lot more financially feasible over time. But the truth is, the planet, when we broke 400 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, that was kind of a point of no return for us. And right now, I don't think we've been below 415 or so for about 4 years. Maybe I might have those numbers a little bit skewed, but we haven't been below 400 in quite a while. That warming trend has a chain reaction kind of an effect. We've got almost all the methane, like the majority of the methane that exists on the planet, is buried in the permafrost. And as the permafrost melts and you see those exploding plumes of methane, that creates a really, really toxic environment for us. I mean, if you look at Venus, you'll see what we could ultimately become if all of our greenhouse gases, the ones that naturally exist on the planet and the ones that we insist on creating and pumping into the atmosphere, we could become Venus, which has a daytime temperature that can melt lead. Not really where we want to go. Yeah. So it's not a thing that we should aspire to. I say that because, the trajectory for commerce, for manufacturing is solidly moving in the green direction. Unfortunately, there are a lot of things that we have to clean up simultaneously. We have to find a way to stop the permafrost from melting, and there are some great solutions out there. Some of them are really, really simple that come from just planting in places, having animals come. There's a symbiotic nature between life and the planet that seems to be really, if we just let it be, it heal a lot. Unfortunately, I don't think there are any great carbon sequestering technologies that are out there. I know there are some folks who are talking about returning carbon into capturing it and turning it into rocks. That's a very that takes a long time, first of all, and I don't know that it's anything that is other than just a cool thing to show that we could do. I don't think it's really realistic. So I think nature will ultimately help us. Carbon only stays in the atmosphere for so long, and then it returns to the earth. And if we topsoil captures a lot of carbon. So if we invest in farming, we can actually grow plants that will take a lot of the carbon out of the air. We can hurried that along, I think, in a really good way. So,
thank you. It's not often, spoken about. It's not usually in the conversation when, uh, maybe because a part of us still wants to believe that we kind of can think our way through it. Nature-based solutions, as you just mentioned, are usually like below, not really on top of the hierarchy of things or solutions we want to consider. And and that's not helping us. And nature, as we know, is robust, but nature's ability to mop up these carbon emissions, it cannot be rushed. I mean, it takes its time. The resources are there if we will allow the forest and to remain. And like you said, if we can be more smart with agricultural processes, nature, we can gradually be able to mop up our carbon emissions. But one of the concern I just have about that is that as long as we keep thinking that there's a solution, it doesn't seem to help us to be more responsible to mitigate in the first place, because it becomes like a force of just like people, in corporations will tell you that the solutions to our plastics is recycling. So they're pushing the responsibility away from them to us, to individuals, to say, oh, you just recycle, and as far as that thinking is there, it continues to be, it gives them an opportunity to continue to, create more mess and all that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And again, I think that's an incredibly valuable point, and it's something that people need to be mindful of. If you go back to Carl Sagan, who wrote The Pale Blue Dot, of the image of the Earth that was taken from Voyager just as it was about to leave for deep space. In his essay, he writes, no one's coming to save this planet. This is the only home we've ever known. And it's really, unless up our technology and start looking for another home, it's all we've got. So we really should take care of it. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. He said it a lot more eloquently than I did. But that picture of this tiny little blue dot, one pixel on a gigantic screen captured from billions of miles away, is really telling. It's sobering. And I think when you see that, you really, if you're not inspired to take action, then you should probably just, at the very least, for the sake of humanity, just get out of the way and let the smarter people figure these plans out. I think that there are solutions. And I think, to your point, there's a natural solution. The planet wants to be in balance, and it will, eventually, the carbon, if we stop pumping it in, it will find its way down into the rocks over hundreds of years or centuries or millennia or whatever. And again, you're talking about carbon has a shelf life of about 100 years in the atmosphere. Methane is a lot heavier than carbon, maybe 3 to 4 times heavier than carbon. It fortunately doesn't stay up there as long, but it does a lot of damage while it's up there. So, I think making those strides to clean these things up is very, very important. But I think, to your point, the first thing is there's so many people out there who don't even acknowledge or admit that there is an actual issue here. That people think, I can't tell you how many people I've run into who say it's just a natural cycle. This is the natural cycle of the world. The Earth does this every couple of. It's like, it's not. It's really not. We have ice core samples from Antarctica and Greenland where we can actually drill down, and like strata in a canyon or like the rings of a tree, we can tell how much carbon was in the atmosphere dating back to about 800,000 years. I think it was 600 or 800,000 years, long enough. And we can look at those samples, because throughout the freeze thaw cycles that happen every year, carbon is kind of captured in that. We can look back, and we have not, before the Industrial Revolution, we never went above 250, 260, and now we're over 400. So this is real. We're in virgin territory here. We're in a place where we have seen the planet rebelling against what we're doing to it in the form of floods, stronger storms, increased winds. I think it's just time for us to actually listen to what the planet is saying and try to make a really responsible path forward.
That's very, very important and very instructive. And for me, I mean, you said something initially that, you're from a context where you don't feel the direct impact of climate change. I mean, you're protected, and of course, come from a developed country, with the resources to respond quickly to, even if there's any impact, negative impact in terms of weather, extreme weathers, and all that. But I came from a context where every day we see the realities of climate change, we live it, and unfortunately, apart from the fact that not shifting blames to say, oh, we're one of the least, we contribute the least to the carbon emissions in the atmosphere. But unfortunately, also, we do not have the resources to respond. And so for us, this phenomenon is what we see every day. It's a way of life to us. And one of the demands then in the Paris Agreement is the insertion of the clause for, I just skipped my mind. It's about damages, saying getting advanced countries or developed countries who have led to this climate crisis we're experiencing to be responsible and to pay for some of the damages their activities is causing other parts of the world. But that's usually like a far cry. Nobody wants to be held responsible. Can I just digress quickly and ask, as a filmmaker, as an artist, how do you bring awareness, or what do you do in your work that contributes to climate actions?
Sure. Well, in addition to the magazine articles that I've written, and I've tried to keep that, make people aware of the technologies that are developed. I also run a nonprofit called Indie Round, which is we support K through 12 education using virtual reality. The way we look at it is we bring the benefit of experiential learning to people who don't have the capacity, or may not have the capacity, to go out and actually enjoy the experience or to have the experience. And there's an old phrase that dates back to about 350 BC that says, "I hear and I forget, I see, I remember, I do and I learn." So what we try to do is bring the doing part to actually, have people benefit have students, K through 12 students, benefit by being able to experience something, be able to walk into the Colosseum in Rome, or to go, to walk the trails of the Underground Railroad as an escaped slave or a freedom-seeking slave in the 1850s. To have that experience just brings a lot more depth to it. So that's what the organization is about. Right now we're building a project, an experiential virtual reality project based on the Al Gore's work, the Climate Reality Project's work, that kind of mirrors their narrative, that will allow people to actually see what's going on in the world, to experience it. Because to your point, in North America, we don't really feel the effects all that much. We can sit around and we can watch it on TV. We can complain about it. We can complain about people trying to come through our borders all day long. There are still people in Syria who have no home, who, for almost a decade now, not had a place to live. And that is almost all based on climate. The climate change took their agricultural solutions and had nowhere to live. That's going to happen. And if we are the last place in the world, everybody's going to come here, but we won't be. But so that's what we try to do, is we try to do and show people who live here, this is real. This happens every day. Every day there are people who have to make a choice. Do I stay in my homeland, or do I try to find another home? And if I have to find another home, where am I going to go? Because a lot of places have the same problems, and they have the same limited resources. And are they going to actually welcome me? Or there's a lot of political unrest, a lot of armed conflict based on this whole thing. The impacts of climate change go deep into the human psyche. It brings us back to the basic nature of, is that your food or is that my food? I'll fight you for it. And I was here for it. It's just a basic spiral of intellectual arguments based on that. We have limited resources. I want it and you want it. How do we make that, soluble? And so that's what we try to do. Bring that argument into people's lives. We strap it to their heads.
Thank you so much for focusing on the solutions and targeting the young ones, the kids who are going to be at the receiving end of our action or inaction today. So what kind of feelings do you have when you do things like this?
Well, I have two sons, so I have trepidatious is how I feel. I feel, I think there's a part of me that appreciates the fact that I was blessed with a consciousness that lets me let this in and deal with this and process this information. I feel lucky. I feel lucky to be in a place where I'm not doing this on the fly. I'm not a refugee. I'm not trying to find arguments as I'm fleeing, trying to find resources. I am in a fairly comfortable place, and I appreciate that. Like, I have no words to say how much I appreciate what my life has given me. But I look forward and I look at my sons and I think, I'm trying to do what I can do for them. But is it enough? Is it enough, not just for my sons, but for everyone's sons? If you're a parent, if you have ever, if you've seen Baby Yoda on TV and you felt compassion for something with really big eyes and you want it to survive, you know what this feeling feels like. And to say, no, I just don't care, you're on your own, isn't in me. I don't think it's in most of us. I think most of us, given that prompt of wanting to help somebody, there's a supramarginal gyrus, a part in the brain. I know this from doing virtual reality. The part that speaks about empathy and creates empathy. It's the place where empathy is born in our brain, gets larger generation to generation. In other words, we have more increasing compassion as time goes on. That kind of conflicts with this message that we've been hearing, that it's not as important as you think it is. It's not man-made or whatever. No, it is man-made. It's a big issue. We have the sentience to actually recognize it. We have the intelligence to actually deal with it, to create solutions. Get out of the way, because we're trying to save this world for my sons and your sons and everyone's sons.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question before we leave, and that question is, with all you do, what are some of the worries you have for the future? Do you think we're doing enough, or more people are doing enough? And what kind of future, if we continue business as usual, more people don't get on the train, are your children going to inherit? Do they get worried about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm worried, because I'm always worried, because it's because nothing is solved yet. Until it's solved, I don't think we can not worry about it. I think we can afford to not worry about it. But I think the thing that really makes me lose sleep is the fact that there are so many people out there who, and again, I get it. If you get your paycheck from big oil or coal or whatever, you have literally or you're an investor, you have a vested interest in the success of that technology. I get that. But, I look at it as, you're talking about money. Again, money is a mutually agreed upon illusion. It's as if we're playing Monopoly. We had a great game of Monopoly going. You've got all the cards on, the hotels on Boardwalk and Park Place, but the house has caught fire. The house that you're playing Monopoly in caught fire. The prudent thing to do is stop, put the fire out. Then you can come back to the game, and if we all remember how rich you were, you continue being rich. No one wants to take your winning game away from you, but you've got to stop the fire. So the thing that gets me is the number of people who are out there who come up with ridiculous arguments about why we shouldn't move forward, why we shouldn't take it seriously. They've all been debunked. They've all been, the data is out there. The data shows, A, it's real. B, it's really real. It's catching up. We don't have a whole lot of time left. I mean, some people are saying less than 10 years before we hit that point where it's just point of no return. And I'm not saying it's an extinction level event, but it probably won't be long after that point before it becomes an extinction level event. Think about that for a second. The extinction of our species, like that's scary, but that's what we're facing. We don't have the time to dance around that issue anymore. We're talking about an unlivable planet for humanity. Maybe the tardigrades will be able to pick up where we left off, but humanity going away because we made bad choices when we knew the truth. That's the part that gets me. And the people out there who propagate those untruths, it's criminal. It's the
worst. Criminal.
Pardon?
You said it's criminal.
Yes, exactly. Worst human behavior I could ever imagine. and again, who do you want to explain it to my children? Because I sure can't. So,
wow, thank you. It's been a wonderful time with you today, and I'm sure there's there's a lot more inside of you we need to tap and get out. And thank you for all that you do. We appreciate you, and I just want to share this thanks with you. It's a little poem, and it's also a prayer, depending on how it comes across to you. We give thanks to all who are moved in their ways to heal and to protect the earth in small ways and in large ways. Blessing on the composters, the gardeners, the breeders of womb, and the soil builders, and those who cleanse the water and purify the air, and all those who cleanse up the messes others have made. Blessing on all those who heal the cities, who bring them alive again with excitement, creativity, and love. Gratitude and blessing to all who stand up against greed, who risk themselves, and to those who have bled and have been wounded, and to all those who have given their lives in service to the earth. Thank you for all you do. We need many more of you, and please, I hope you're trying to also duplicate more of you. Push it out.
Hopefully they don't show exactly like me, but they'll have to on my phone. And thank you for what you do. This is such an amazing program, and I think it's so valuable. Our gratitude, and thank you for sharing that prayer, because that was really beautiful. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And so, viewers, thank you for joining us today on Climate Action 101. We're just starting this and hopefully give many more people, even government, we need to call them to account to what they were doing or how and what measures have been put in place to, mop up carbons from the atmosphere, and also what other ways that we can promote nature or allow nature to replenish itself and to help us in this process of restoring our planet for ourselves and also for future generation and also other forms of lives. And so next week, Monday, we'll be coming up with another individuals, business leaders, and to share with us what are the ideas they're acting on and what other ways that individually and collectively we can do to, contribute a little quota to making sure the planet is habitable for all. Thank you. So I'll see you again next Monday.
Thank you.